Okay. Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Yes, you're audible.
Okay, and my screen, it's visible, right?
Yes, yes,
Right.
visible.
Okay, so we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadanatikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yudapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagarjadam Sagana Raghunatham Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste तब तक कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Hare Krishna, thanks for joining today's session. So today's topic is actually the second part to the session which we did in end of January, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll just go through a quick recap. In Gita 7.15, Krishna talks about the 4 types of people who do not surrender to him. In 7.16, he talks about the 4 types of people who surrender to him. In 7.15, it's about the 4 types of people who do not surrender to him. Namam dushkritano muda prapadyante naradama Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā asuram bhavamashrita. The grossly foolish, the lowest among mankind, those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and those who are atheistic, those who partake of atheistic nature of demons do not surrender unto me. So in this topic, just as we saw in the previous session in January, so we'll be looking at one particular category of people, meaning those who are Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. If in the purport, Prabhupada explains, if surrendering oneself into the lotus feet of Krishna can help them to cross over the ocean of material existence, why do not these educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders, why they don't do it? Those who are really learned scholars, like the Mahajans and also the great sages, they surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. But the so-called intellectuals, those who are those who are identified to be great academic scholars, they do not do it because the material energy or Krishna's inferior energy is so powerful. It has been stated by Krishna himself in Gita 7.14. But in 7. Actually, he talks about it in 7.12, 13. And then in 7.14, Krishna says, though my inferior material energy is so powerful, those who surrender to me can easily cross over it. But the so-called great academic scholars do not do it. And these atheistic plan makers, who are the Duskritis, though they are very intelligent and they endeavor a lot, especially when it comes to planning and execution, but their intelligence is always bewildered by illusion. And therefore, their efforts will end up being misdirected. For example, we have demons like Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. Even I think towards the end of last week's session, I spoke about these two demons, about how foolish they were. The fan club of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, they always try to defend them, saying that they were great scholars and they were also great devotees. But the truth is that both Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, they were engaged in all those pious activities to get boons from Brahma and Shiva, who themselves are exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord. So these foolish demons, Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, actually wanted boons from the exalted devotees of the Supreme Lord, like Brahma and Shiva, to defeat the Supreme Lord. So what could be more foolish than buying weapons from Israel to attack Israel, or to buy submarines from France to attack France? So such was the foolishness of these demons like Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. And in Kali Yuga, there are so many fan clubs for these demons, because even there are so many foolish Kali Jivas who still want to follow their footsteps. So it's their choice. These Duskritis are categorized into 4 types. But in this topic, we'll be focusing on this particular category of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, those persons whose knowledge has been stolen by illusion. There are a great number of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, even amongst the scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. Though it is stated clearly in the Bhagavad Gita and also many other authentic scriptures like Bhagavatam that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, these Māyayāpahṛta-jñānas do not accept that truth, and instead they merely consider him as another human being. It is simply because this class of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānas do not receive the knowledge from a bona fide parampara, and therefore they do not get the true benefit of their scholarship. They do not get they do not achieve the ultimate goal of studying these authentic scriptures. First of all, since they don't even belong to a bona fide parampara, so there's no way they can get access to the authentic scriptures, and therefore they are deluded. They think that they know everything about the scriptures, but they do not, and therefore they don't surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So this is one such personality. He's well known as a very educated person. So I'm not going to comment regarding his expertise regarding the fields of economics and law for which he was awarded doctorates. But just because you are good at something, it doesn't mean that you know everything. Simply earning a doctorate in one field does not give us the rights to talk about everything, unless we gain proper knowledge from the bona fide institutions or paramparas, especially in the context of religious scriptures, dharmic scriptures. So this was a common disease among many of the Indian politicians. They, especially the pre-independence type of politicians in India, they were always, half the time they were confused whether they should be involved in politics or to be preaching about dharmic scriptures. So they ended up doing both, and they were neither successful in any of it. So this is actually a recap of what we saw in the previous session in January. So in that session, we covered certain points made by this genius from his writings and speeches, volume 3. These were reproduced from chapter 1 of his writings and speeches, volume 3. So he says that the entire teachings of Bhagavad Gita can be summarized according to 6 verses. So here he actually highlights the verses 4.13, 3.35, 3.26, 29, and 4.7 and 4.8. So this genius, he actually selected 6 verses to summarize the entire Bhagavad Gita. And we can see clearly that the 6 verses which he selected were only from chapters 3 and 4. So such was his intellectual prowess. So he was able to summarize an entire scripture which consists of 700 verses based on 6 verses. So even if we consider only the verses spoken by Krishna, still it was a meager 1% of the entire Bhagavad Gita. So this genius was so gifted that he was able to summarize the entire Bhagavad Gita based on just 1% of all the verses. So in many of our institutions of higher learning, especially in universities, since they are autonomous bodies, most of the lecturers, they have their KPI, like they have to conduct research and publish a certain number of publications, whether it's research articles or books or anything. So they have all these KPIs. So if they follow the footsteps of this genius, they can all come up with at least one publication every week, regardless of how many hours they are supposed to teach. They can all achieve their KPIs like 10 years in advance within 1 year itself, because this genius was able to summarize the entire Bhagavad Gita based on just 6 verses. That too were selected from 2 chapters, chapter 3 and 4. So such was his genius. But in today's session, we'll be focusing on what this genius has written in chapter 10 and chapter 13 of this volume 3. We have already seen what he wrote in chapter 1 of this volume 3, and we have covered that part in the previous session. So today we'll be focusing on chapters 10 and 13 of his volume 3. In page number 262, he says that Krishna begins to argue with Arjuna and provoke him to fight. This argument takes the form of a question and answer of a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, at the end of which Arjuna agrees to fight. So in page 262, our genius Ambedkar says that Arjuna agrees to fight in the end. After a series of questions and answers, Arjuna agrees to fight. But in the very next page, our genius also says that when all his arguments fail to move Arjuna to fight, he simply orders him to fight, and the frightened Arjuna gets up and does his biddings. So our genius says one thing in one page, and in the very next page, he says the exact opposite. In page 262, he said that Arjuna agreed to fight in the end after the question and answers. Then in the very next page, he says that Krishna's arguments failed to convince Arjuna. But however, Arjuna was so frightened that he simply agreed. So this is another unique characteristic of our genius. He says one thing in one page, and then he says the exact opposite in the very next page. But we'll just look at what our authentic scriptures say. In Gita 1.28, Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." 1.29, my whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. 1.46, the last verse of chapter 1. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So we know that in chapter 1, Arjuna was so overwhelmed by emotions that he was unwilling to fight. He actually gave up, and even in chapter 1, only he was talking throughout the entire chapter. And Lord Krishna doesn't even speak in chapter 1 until, of course, Lord Krishna begins to speak in 2.2, but the actual dialogue begins after Arjuna surrenders to Krishna as a disciple. In 2.7, Arjuna says that now I'm confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So the dialogue actually started only when Arjuna himself requested Krishna and he surrendered as Krishna's disciple. Arjuna himself acknowledges the fact that he's become confused about his duty because of miserly weakness. So he's requesting Lord Krishna to explain to him. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains, all Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. One must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. He is the miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human and who thus quits this world like the cats and dogs without understanding the signs of self-realization. This human form of life is the most valuable asset. So, only by approaching a bona fide spiritual master, we can get the most out of this human form of life. If we don't achieve the purpose for which this life was given to us, then we are going to likely end up in a much degraded material body. So Prabhupada also explains that there is the Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life. So a Brahmana is the person who knows how to fully utilize this human form of life. Again, a Brahmana is not someone who is merely born in a Brahmana family. It depends on the qualities. The Kripanas or miserly persons waste their time in the material conception of life. They are too attached to their families and relatives based on the basis of skin disease. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were the causes of his perplexities. Arjuna himself admits that he has become weak, he has become confused because of miserly weakness. He admits his flaws. He is therefore asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master. He offers himself to Krishna as a disciple. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of Bhagavad Gita. How Arjuna understands the Bhagavad Gita is stated in the Gita itself. And yet, foolish, mundane scholars explain that one need not submit to Krishna as a person. One who has no sense of this understanding is the greatest fool in trying to understand Bhagavad Gita. So, we are actually looking at the type of observations made by one such person, just like we saw the rebuttal to all his observations in the previous session. We'll be looking at more rebuttals to his observations in chapters 10 and 13 of his volume 3. Now we know that Lord Krishna spoke 574 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and 84 verses were spoken by Arjuna. But not all the verses spoken by Arjuna were questions. In some places, Arjuna is also reaffirming. He is saying that he is convinced of what Krishna says, and at some other parts, he merely asks for some clarification and all that. But starting from chapter 2 until chapter 18, up to 18.63, Krishna explains everything to Arjuna, and then he says, deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. Yada ichchasi tata kuru. So, Krishna is in no way forcing Arjuna to fight. He is only explaining what is ideal for him to do. He has like explained all the pros and cons, and then he's leaving it to Arjuna for him to decide. This is clearly stated in 18.63. But our genius Ambedkar said that Krishna's arguments fail to convince Arjuna, and he simply forces Arjuna to fight. So those claims are completely contradictory to what is actually mentioned in the authentic verses. In 18.63, we can see that Krishna is leaving it to Arjuna to decide after giving him all the knowledge. Also, in 18.72, Krishna is asking him further for to make sure that Arjuna has fully understood all that he wanted to tell him. So Krishna is asking Arjuna, O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So Krishna is really making sure that Arjuna is fully convinced. Our genius Ambedkar said that Krishna's arguments failed to convince Arjuna, but in 18.72, Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is fully convinced or not. And what does Arjuna say? Arjuna uvacha, Nashtomo aspritin labdha tvat prasadan maitata sthiyosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and prepared to act according to your instructions. Before saying Karishye Vachanam Tava, Arjuna is saying Nashto Moha Spriti Labdha Tat Prasadan Maitita Stidosmi Gata Sandeha. Arjuna is clearly saying that his illusion is now gone. He has regained his memory. He is now firm and free from doubts. So Arjuna himself is saying that he has been convinced. He is fully convinced of everything that Krishna told him, and therefore he is prepared to act according to Krishna's instructions. So our genius Ambedkar was saying that Krishna failed to convince Arjuna with all his arguments, and then he simply told Arjuna to fight when he was frightened. But we can clearly see that in 18.73, Arjuna himself is saying that he no longer has any doubts, which means that he is fully convinced with everything that Krishna had told him. Apart from that, our genius Ambedkar was also trying to give this impression as though Krishna was unable to convince Arjuna, and like as though Krishna was somewhat like a dictator. But in 4.34, Krishna says, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya upadekshanti te jnanam jnana sattva darshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Though the Gita is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, actually the instructions are meant for all of us. So in 4.34, Krishna is also telling us to approach bona fide spiritual masters, to serve them, and also to inquire from them submissively. Now, to inquire from them submissively means that we should inquire from them, but we should not blindly challenge them for everything, because it's a very practical thing. Because even in schools, if school students, they go to school, and it is good if they ask questions, but if they are going to simply ask all sorts of nonsensical questions to simply challenge the teacher, then they can never achieve the learning outcome. So on one hand, it is good for the disciple to be inquisitive, but that does not mean that the disciple should blindly keep challenging the spiritual master. So that's what is meant by submissive inquiry. So Krishna does not he does not prohibit any form of inquiries. He encourages us to learn the truth from bona fide spiritual masters through submissive inquiry. But our genius Ambedkar is trying to paint the image as though Krishna was a dictator who was forcing Arjuna to fight, even after failing to convince him. We have seen all the verses which prove that his claims are baseless. Then in page 263 also, he makes some more interesting observations. Even these observations also further substantiate just that he is indeed a great genius. In page 263, our genius says, Krishna stands out as a representative of other forms of God. For such representative characters in which Krishna appears are clear to anyone who happens to read the Gita even casually. So here we must also appreciate the fact that our genius Ambedkar also comes across as a very honest person, because he himself has admitted that he actually read the Gita just casually, because we can clearly see, based on all his observations of how he tries to summarize the entire Gita based on just 6 verses, that too from chapters 3 and 4. And then when we see all his other unique observations, so in some ways he is also admitting that he himself read the Gita casually. So he's also making some very interesting observations here also to further prove that he is indeed a genius. First, he's saying that Krishna is Vasudeva, in the sense that Vasudeva is another representation of God. For that, he's justifying based on 10.37. Just because Krishna says, of the Vrishnis, I am Vasudeva. So our genius has a very strange obsession with keywords. So he simply picks keywords and uses it to justify his claims. So here he's simply pointing to 10.37 and he says that Krishna is another representation of God in the form of Vasudeva. Now he's actually he's implying that this Vasudeva form is yet another form of God, one of the 4 such representative characters. Okay. But apart from 10.37, which our genius highlighted, there's also this verse 7.19, in which Krishna says, Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā jñānān mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti samatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Our genius Ambedkar is very obsessed with keywords, so he simply picked verse 10.37 and he said that Vasudeva is another form of God. But it is also stated that in 7.19, it is also stated Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. So, based on this verse, Vasudeva, that is Krishna, he is the supreme and he is Swayam Bhagavan. But according to our genius, he also goes on to say in the same page that Krishna is Bhagavan, meaning he is implying that Bhagavan is yet another form of God. So he's saying that this is the second type of God. So for this, he's highlighting 10.12. This is the verse when Arjuna says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Saswatam Divyam, Adidevam Majama Vibhum. That's what our genius, he says that Bhagavan is another form of God. But the meaning of the word Bhagavan has been explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purport for verse 2.2. We know that in verse 2.2 is the verse in which Krishna starts to speak for the first time in the Gita. So the verse starts with Sri Bhagavan Vacha. And in the purport, Prabhupada gives the explanation for the term Bhagavan according to 2 perspectives. In the first half of the purport, Prabhupada talks about the level of realization of the absolute truth. As we know, Bhagavan realization is the topmost realization of absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized in 3 phases of understanding, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Also in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, the conception of absolute truth is explained. Thus, Vadanti tat tatvavidas tatvam yatñānam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So, from authentic scriptures, we know that Bhagavan is the topmost level of realization of the absolute truth. It's not like what our genius Ambedkar says. He's merely implying that Krishna as Bhagavan is another form of God. But no, Bhagavan realization is the topmost level of realization. So in the purport for Gita 2.2, Prabhupada also explains this analogy for the 3 levels, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization. Actually, for this part, we have even discussed in one of our previous sessions, titled Param Satyam, Absolute Truth. So in that session, we have seen these topics in detail. So Brahman realization is just like realizing the sunshine. The one who knows the sun disk around the sun is like Paramatma realization. But the one who is able to see the sun demigod, that is like the Bhagavan realization. So this is just using the analogy of how we view the sun to explain these three levels of realizing the absolute truth. And it can be summarized like this. Bhagavan realization is the superset of the other two. So Bhagavan realization is the topmost. It is not merely another category of God. Also, in the second half of the purport for Gita 2.2, Prabhupada also explains the meaning of the term Bhagavan according to the definition by Parashara Muni. It is explained that Bhagavan is the person who has all these six opulences abundantly in unlimited quantity. So in the purport for Gita 2.2, Prabhupada gives these two explanations. Based on these two perspectives, Prabhupada explains the meaning of the term Bhagavan. So even the meaning of Bhagavan is there in our authentic scriptures, but our genius Ambedkar chooses to use the term Bhagavan as merely another type of God. Then our genius also makes this quite popular claim that Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. For that, our genius is referring to all these verses, like of the Adityas, I'm Vishnu. So just because Krishna spoke this verse, saying that of the Adityas, I'm Vishnu, so our genius simply picked that keyword. And then also in chapter 11, in some of the verses, Arjuna himself is addressing Krishna as Vishnu. So our genius picked all these keywords, and he's saying that Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. But if we look at authentic scriptures, especially in Bhagavatam itself, right from the first verse of Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva has actually compressed the entire essence of Bhagavatam in this very first verse. He begins the verse by addressing the Supreme Lord with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He is specifically referring to Vasudeva, son of Vasudeva. Then each and every single word used in this shloka is very significant to establish that Krishna is Param Satyam. Krishna is the absolute truth. Starting from Janmadhyasya until Satyam Param Dhimai, all these words clearly describe that Krishna is the absolute truth. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. There is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. So, despite the fact that there are in other schools of thought or in many other, especially in WhatsApp University, people tend to equate Vishnu to Brahma and Shiva, but Vishnu is merely an expansion of Krishna, who is the cause of all causes. Brahma himself was created by Vishnu. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. Even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. So the illusion of our genius Ambedkar is not surprising. Then the verse ends with, I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Satyam Param Dhimai. Also in Brahma Samhita, the first verse, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So not just in Gita, if we understand the Gita according to the purpose by our bona fide acharyas, and also if we look at Bhagavatam and all other scriptures, if we understand these authentic scriptures based on our bona fide acharyas commentaries, we can clearly understand the true meaning of Bhagavan. But our we can understand the true meaning of Bhagavan, and also we understand who is Bhagavan. But our genius Ambedkar does not even know who is Bhagavan, and he does not even know the meaning of Bhagavan. Also in Bhagavatam 1.3.28, chapter 3 of Bhagavatam is titled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So in 1.3.28, it is stated, Idi cham sakala pumsa Krishnas to Bhagavan Swayam, Indrari Vyavakanam Lokam, Nrityanti Yuge Yuge. From verse number 1 of chapter 3 until verse number 27, all the various incarnations are described. And in this verse, it is stated that all of the above mentioned incarnations, meaning all the incarnations mentioned in the first 27 verses, are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan. So when Lord Krishna actually descended to the material world, he descended as Swayam Bhagavan with all his complete qualities, compared to other incarnations like Rama and Narasimha. They were either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions. But Krishna descended as Swayam Bhagavan with all his entire qualities. Also in Brahma Samhita 5.139, I worship Govinda, the primal Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions. So from the Bhagavatam and also from this verse, we can understand that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. However, we should not view the plenary portions as being different from the source. We should not really distinguish Rama, Narasimha, and other incarnations as being different from Krishna. But at the same time, it is also important to know who is the source. So Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan, he is the source of all the incarnations, but we do not have to view them differently, because in 5.46 Brahma Samhita, it is also stated that the light of one candle being communicated to other candles, although it burns separately in them, is the same in its quality. I adore the primal Lord Govinda, who exhibits himself equally in the same mobile manner in his various manifestations. So the plenary portions, all the different expansions and incarnations, are just like how the lights travel from one to another. Just like the best analogy is how we light ghee lamps in our temples. Sometimes during festivals, we light up even hundreds or thousands of ghee lamps. So we actually light these ghee lamps from the altar lamp. So the altar lamp is actually the source, but still all the other ghee lamps are also similar to the altar lamp. But at the same time, the altar lamp has an exalted position, being the source. So we do not have to view the plenary portions, the plenary expansions like Rama and Narasimha as being different from Krishna, but it is also important to know Krishna as the source of everything. Then our genius also mentions that Krishna is also an avatar of Shankara, a very new discovery by our genius. For this, he is simply referring to 10.23, simply because Krishna says in that verse, and of the Rudras, I'm Shankara. in this verse, what Krishna actually means is that he is saying of all the Rudras, Shiva is the topmost of all the Rudras. So anything which has the topmost opulence represents Krishna. That is what chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, Vibhuti Yoga, is all about that. But our genius interpreted it in a completely different manner. He's saying that Krishna is an avatar of Shankara. We also saw in our previous session titled Param Satyam, we saw this distinction between the different tattvas. Brahma, being the topmost Jiva tattva, has 78% of all the qualities. Krishna has 64 out of 64 of all the complete qualities, but a Jiva tattva can have up to 78% of the qualities. Then it's Shiva tattva followed by Vishnu tattva, and Krishna is the topmost. So we can clearly see the distinction between all these tattvas, how Krishna is different from all the other tattvas. So Shiva tattva has 86% of all the complete qualities of Krishna. Even Vishnu tattva has 94% of the complete qualities, but only Krishna himself has all the complete qualities. So here we can clearly see the distinction between all the different tattvas. We can clearly see the difference between Shiva tattva and Vishnu tattva, and also between Vishnu tattva and Krishna. Also in Bhagavatam 4:31-14, Narada Muni, in his instructions to the Pratyatas, he is saying, Yata tarur mula nichechanena triptyanti tat chanda bhujopashaka pranopahara chayatendriyanam tataiva sarvaranam achyuteja. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So very often the ISKCON devotees are often blamed as fanatics, or also blamed as being disrespectful of the demigods, but that's not true. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says in verses 720 and 721 that those who worship the demigods are less intelligent, simply because even if we look at the instructions of Narada Muni, here what he's trying to say is that it is best to pour water to the root of a tree. So those who want to pour water to the leaf, they are free to do so, but we know that that is being less intelligent. So it is best if we pour water to the root of the tree. So that is what worshipping Achyuta is all about. When we worship Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, it will satisfy all the demigods. So there's no question of disrespecting other demigods. When we are worshipping Krishna, we are satisfying all the demigods. So it is not like disrespecting Shiva or Brahma. Also in Bhagavatam 12th canto, chapter 13, verse number 16, Nimnakanam yata Ganga, Devanam achito yata, Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu, Purananam idam tata. Just as Ganga is the greatest of all rivers, Lord Achyuta is the supreme among deities, and Lord Shambhu, Shiva, the greatest of Vaishnavas. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the greatest of all Puranas. Shambhu is the greatest of Vaishnavas. Shiva is the greatest of Vaishnavas. We saw the distinction between Shiva Tattva and Vishnu Tattva, and also Krishna Tattva. And it is also stated that Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. So this is what has been mentioned in our authentic scriptures. But our genius, Ambedkar, came up with a completely different interpretation, saying that Krishna is an avatar of Shankara. His obsession for keywords is unmatched. And in chapter 13, also he makes some weird claims. He talks about how Krishna tries to justify war by speaking verses number 11 to 28 of chapter 2 in the Bhagavad Gita. Our genius is saying that Krishna is using verses number 11 to 28 of chapter 2 to justify war. But if we examine those verses from verses number 11 to 28, in fact, from 11 to 30, Krishna is only talking about the distinction between body and soul. So that is not meant to justify the war. It is actually meant for all of us, because it's not like Arjuna was the only one who was attached to his family and friends. Even all of us, we still have this, though we have certain level of knowledge regarding the distinction between material body and soul, but even if something happens to our loved ones, somehow naturally we will start weeping. And because even now I'm forced to use the word naturally due to the strong influence of material nature itself. I'm being subjected to the influence of Krishna's inferior energy, that is material nature, and therefore that influence is forcing me to utter the word naturally. So this skin disease that we have, though we know the distinction between material body and soul theoretically, it is very difficult for us to practice it in reality, especially when something happens to our loved ones. So it's not like these verses 11 to 30, it's not like these verses are only meant for Arjuna in the context of the war. It is actually meant for all of us. What is actually specific to the context of the war are these verses from it actually starts beyond verse number 30 of chapter 2. But at the same time, our genius is also saying that war and killing need therefore give no ground to remorse or to shame. So argues the Bhagavad Gita. Another major allegation that all these Duryodhana fan club members always give is that they say that Bhagavad Gita encourages violence. They always say that Krishna encouraged Arjuna to kill the Kauravas, but they will never explain why their poster boy Duryodhana refused to agree for the peace offer. When the Pandavas asked for just 5 villages, he said that he won't even part with the tiny piece of land through which to drive even a needle. So the Duryodhana fan club members, they won't explain why their poster boy was so defiant. Actually, it was their poster boy who wanted this war. He was the one who wanted to get killed, but his fan club members will always try to justify his doings, and they won't give any answer to why Duryodhana refused the peace offer, but they will blame Krishna and they'll simply defame Bhagavad Gita by saying that it encourages violence. So our genius Ambedkar is also putting a very similar claim. At the same time, I also want to highlight that our genius Ambedkar is also known as the father of the Indian Constitution. But it's very strange that whenever Ambedkar's fan club members, whenever they want to glorify him, they'll always use this title. But whenever there's any discussion regarding the flaws in the constitution arise, at that time, they'll simply say that, no, Ambedkar was just the chairman of the committee. There were many other members in the committee also. And then there were many debates that were conducted. So whenever the flaws of the constitution are being pointed out, they'll say that, no, Ambedkar alone was not responsible. But at all other times, they'll be saying that he was the one who came up with the entire constitution. So even these Ambedkar fan club members, they also have this disease of saying they also have a similar disease, just like Ambedkar, because we just saw that he says one thing in one page, and then he says the exact opposite in the other page, in the very next page. So his chelas, they also have a very similar disease. Now, our genius Ambedkar is saying that he's trying to imply that Bhagavad Gita also encourages violence, but Krishna is only advising Arjuna to do his duty. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, so Krishna was only advising Arjuna to do his duty. And regardless of all this propaganda against the Varnashrama system, in all the countries, they actually have the Varnashrama system, because all the countries have their armed forces, all the countries have their traders, all the countries also have their labor class. So whether they admit it or not, all the countries in the world are also practicing Varnashrama system. And even if we look at the Constitution of India, it talks about the armed forces. So based on our genius Ambedkar's claim, he's trying to paint the Bhagavad Gita as a scripture that encourages violence. So I'm just wondering why he also wanted this armed force to be part of the constitution. Like in this seventh schedule, it talks about the scope of the union list, what are the powers of the central government. So it is practically impossible for any nation to operate without an armed force. So that's what was happening even in the previous yugas. And Arjuna, being a Kshatriya, he was only doing his duty. And when he was in a completely demoralized state, Lord Krishna only advised Arjuna to do his duty as a soldier. Even in India, there are so many medals and awards that are given to soldiers who perform great feats. But if the same soldier gets involved in a personal dispute, and if he murders someone, that same soldier will be put into jail. So that's the difference between doing one's duty and acting simply for personal purposes. So Lord Krishna was merely asking Arjuna to do his duty as a Kshatriya. And whether the Duryodhana fan club members like it or not, all the countries all over the world, they all practice this Varnashrama system, because all the countries have their armed forces, they also have their labor class, they also have their class of traders. So it is impossible for any country to operate without the Varnashrama system, whether they like it or not. So our genius was saying that Krishna tries to justify killing in the war using verses 11 to 28, but Krishna only talks about the specific context of the war, starting from verses 2.31 to 2.38. Only in these verses, Krishna is specifically focusing about the context of the war. He's saying that considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there's no need for hesitation. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So, Krishna is only explaining the context of the war from the perspective of how Arjuna should do his duty. Krishna is not telling Arjuna to simply kill for fun. He is only telling Arjuna to do his duty. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. So, what Krishna is telling in these verses is very relevant to what is being practiced in all the other countries, even now, because in all the armed forces, they have to fight to defend their countries, and all the soldiers, they are only doing their duty. If any soldier kills for his over his personal disputes, for sure he'll be put into jail. But if he kills the enemy country's soldiers, then he will be rewarded. So that is the plain and simple distinction between performing one's duty and killing someone for some personal disputes. So it's as simple as that. But still, since the Duryodhana fan club members, since they have their agenda, their own agenda, so they'll always try to paint the Bhagavad Gita as a scripture that encourages violence. But if we refer to the authentic verses, we'll know the truth. Then our genius Ambedkar, in his work in page 376, he is also referring to some other references. And then these intellectuals, they are also trying to imply that Krishna even used his Vishwarupa manifestation to kind of blackmail Arjuna. But if we look at the authentic verses from chapter 11 especially, we know that it was Arjuna who wanted to view the Vishwarupa darshan. In chapter 10 on Vibhuti Yoga, actually in Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna describes all his opulences, starting from verse number 20 onwards. But even before that, Arjuna was convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because in verse number 12 of the 10th chapter, Arjuna says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajayum. Then in 10.13, he says, Austam Rishe Sarve Devarshi Nardas Tata, Ashito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaya Bravisime. So even before Krishna starts to explain about his opulences in detail, starting from verse number 20 of the 10th chapter, even before that, Arjuna was convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he is also referring to the references made by Devarishi Narada and other great sages. Then after Krishna explains about all the various opulences, Arjuna becomes more curious to see the Vishrupa Darshan, and that's why starting from from the first verse of chapter 11, Arjuna said, "By my hearing the instructions you have kindly given me about these most confidential spiritual subjects, my illusion has now been dispelled." So even after hearing the descriptions by Krishna in chapter 10, he has become clear about the true position of Krishna. Then he continues, "O lotus-eyed one, I've heard from you in detail about the appearance and disappearance of every living entity and have realized your inexhaustible glories. O greatest of all personalities, O supreme form, though I see you here before me in your actual position as you have described yourself, I wish to see how you have entered into this cosmic manifestation. I want to see that form of yours. If you think that I'm able to behold your cosmic form, O my Lord, O master of all mystic power, then kindly show me that unlimited universal self." So when we see the first 4 verses of chapter 11, we can clearly see that it was Arjuna who wanted to see the Vishrupa Darshan. But our genius Ambedkar is saying that Krishna actually used that Vishrupa Darshan to kind of frighten Arjuna. But was Arjuna actually frightened? In 11.14, it is stated, "Then bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances and with folded hands began to pray to the Supreme Lord." In the purport, Prabhupada explains, the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna changes immediately when Arjuna saw the Vishrupa Darshan. Before, Krishna and Arjuna had a relationship based on friendship. After the revelation, Arjuna is offering obeisances with great respect and with folded hands. Thus, Arjuna's relationship becomes one of wonder rather than friendship. There are 12 basic kinds of relationship. So these are the 12 rasas. There are these 5 primary rasas: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya or Shringara, and the 7 secondary rasas, out of which wonder is also one of the secondary rasas. So before viewing the Vishrupa Darshan, Arjuna had the Sakya ras, and after viewing it, he is experiencing the rasa of wonder. Here, Arjuna was inspired by the relationship of wonder. He was not, of course, afraid. His natural loving friendship was overwhelmed by wonder, and thus he reacted in this way by offering obeisances with folded hands. Then Arjuna also says, "Thinking of you as my friend, I have rashly addressed you. O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, not knowing your glories, please forgive me whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times, jesting as we relaxed, lay on the same bed, or sat or ate together, sometimes alone and sometimes in front of my many friends. O infallible one, please excuse me for all those offenses. You are the Supreme Lord to be worshipped by every living being. Thus, I fall down to offer you my respectful obeisances and ask your mercy, as a father tolerates the impudence of his son, a friend the impertinence of a friend, or husband the familiarity of his wife. Please tolerate the wrongs I may have done you." After seeing this universal form, which I've never seen before, I'm gladdened, but at the same time, my mind is disturbed with fear. Therefore, please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of Godhead, O Lord of Lords, O Abode of the universe. In the purport, Prabhupada explains, Arjuna is very joyful to see that his friend Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can show such a wonderful universal form. But at the same time, after seeing that universal form, he is afraid that he has committed so many offenses to Krishna out of his unalloyed friendship. Thus, his mind is disturbed out of fear, although he had no reason to fear. So Arjuna's fear was simply because at that point, he realized that his friend was the true Supreme Personality of Godhead. His fear was because of that, not because of any other reason. This universal form is material and temporary, as the material world is temporary, but in the Vaikuntha planets, he has his transcendental form with 4 hands as Narayana. So first, Arjuna saw the universal form, which represents the universe, the manifestation of the universe, the temporary material universe. But the Vaikuntha form, which is the 400 Narayana form, is the transcendental form. So Arjuna wanted to see that form also. In all the Vaikuntha planets, Krishna resides there in the 400 Narayana form, but the arrangement of his paraphernalia are different in every Vaikuntha planet. So that Narayana form is known with different names. So Arjuna actually wanted to see even the Narayana form, the 400 Narayana form, after viewing the universal form. So Arjuna is saying, O universal form, O 1,000-armed Lord, I wish to see you in your 4-armed form, with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. To which Krishna replies, you have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine, referring to the Vishwarupa form. My devotee, be free again from all disturbances. With a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real 4-armed form and at last showed his 2-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. So first, Arjuna requested to view the Vishwarupa Darshan, that is the universal form, showing the representation of the material universe. But at a certain point, he was bewildered by that display, which is also regarded as just temporary. So he wanted to see the 4-armed form, and then at last Krishna is also showing the 2-armed form back to the original personal form. So in this entire chapter 11, we can clearly see that Krishna is only fulfilling the wish of Arjuna. Right from the beginning, Arjuna was the one who wanted to view the Vishwarupa Darshan. It's not like Krishna made use of that universal form to frighten Arjuna. When Arjuna saw Krishna in his original form, back to the 200 form, he said, "O Janardana, seeing this human-like form, so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind and I am restored to my original nature." So previously we saw how our genius Ambedkar and many other so-called intellectuals who are mentioned in his citations, they were also saying that Krishna actually made use of this Vishwarupa Darshan to kind of blackmail Arjuna with brute force. But we can clearly see from the authentic verses that that's not true, because it was Arjuna who wanted to see the universal form. But after realizing that that form is not pleasing, then he requests to see the 400 Narayana form and then back to the 200 original personal form of Krishna. So in chapter 11, Lord Krishna is merely fulfilling the wishes of Arjuna. It's not like he's using the universal form to kind of blackmail Arjuna. Now, this is regarding a disciple of our genius Ambedkar. His name is Kanwal Balki. And most of these disciples of Ambedkar, they tend to be self-proclaimed progressive thinkers. So in one of his articles, he is also saying that Gita 4.13 talks about the Varna system, which is heredity. If we look at the verse itself, in 4.13, which talks about in which Krishna talks about the Varna system, we can clearly see that Krishna only refers to gunas and karmas, but the Ambedkar fan club members, they still try to somehow distort the true meaning of the verse, saying that it is hereditary. But if we look at the exact verse, it is clearly stated, Chatur Vanya Maya system, Gunakarma Vivagasa, Tasya Kaltaram Avyam, Vidya Kaltaram Avyam. The divisions, the 4 divisions, are only based on gunas and karmas. If we look at the authentic verse, we can clearly see that the varnas got nothing to do with birth. The divisions are only on the basis of gunas and karmas. Even in chapter 18, Krishna describes in detail about the further about the varna system in 18.40 onwards, from 18.40 to 18.44. In 18.41, Krishna says that all the 4 varnas are only based on the qualities, and then in 18.42, he describes the qualities of a Brahmana. Like in 18.42, Krishna says, Samo Tamastapa Saucham, Shantirajam Mevasa, Jnana Vinyana Mastikyam, Brahma Karma Swavajam. So in 18.42, Krishna is talking about the qualities of a Brahmana. A Brahmana is someone who has qualities like equanimity, tolerance, religious wisdom. So only a person with those qualities, only that person is a Brahmana, not merely someone who was born in a Brahmana family. So there are more than enough verses which describe how only the gunas and karmas distinguish between the 4 varnas, but our Ambedkar fan club members, they have their specific agenda, so they'll continue to distort all these verses, and they'll keep on pursuing the agenda that was set by their paymasters. But if we clearly study the authentic scriptures, we can know the truth, and we can also impart it to others. Because even in chapter 16, Krishna says, Ya Shastra Vidhi Mustulja, Valtate Kamakarta, Nasa Siddhim Vavnoti, Nasukam Naparamgatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and who acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So when it is clearly stated in authentic scriptures that the Varna system is only based on gunas and karmas, but if there are still people who want to simply spread their own propaganda based on their own whims, so Krishna is clearly referring to such people in this verse. So it is clearly stated by Krishna himself that we have to act according to scriptural injunctions. If one does not follow the scriptural injunctions and acts whimsically according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he will never be perfect in his life. In other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind. So whether it was Ambedkar or his fan club members, it's not like they don't know what has been mentioned in the scriptures. They do know that the Varna system is based on gunas and karmas, but they continue to peddle their falsehoods because they have to be loyal to their paymasters. However, we as devotees, we should be always very careful that we study the authentic scriptures and the purports and commentaries by our bona fide acharyas, Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. The word Kama-karta is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. Such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme Lord. Such persons cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. So whether it was Ambedkar or his fan club members, though they know the truth that is there in authentic scriptures, they will continue to spread falsehoods simply for the satisfaction of their paymasters. Then in 16.24, Krishna says, one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So it is extremely important for us to follow scriptural injunctions, mainly because, as we have seen in many of our previous sessions also, we as human beings, we all have these four fallibilities, these four flaws, and we have also seen how our genius Ambedkar came up with his own unique interpretations of the Gita, because he was merely interpreting it based on his mental speculations. That's why even in many of Prabhupada's purports, Prabhupada mentions that we have to follow the bona fide commentaries and purports and not come up with our own mental speculations. Our genius Ambedkar was doing just that. So these people, they have to be loyal to their paymasters who are hell-bent on spreading all sorts of falsehoods against Sanatana Dharma. So they are free to do what they wish. But we as devotees, we just have to follow the instructions of our bona fide acharyas so that we can go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So that's all for today's session. Thanks for attending. So any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, very nice, Prabhu. Very comprehensive about the topic of Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā, right? Whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. I just want to add on a few things. Before that, any questions from the audience? Arasi Mataji, Kirtana Mataji. Any questions from the floor?
No, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what is the conclusion? Actually, we can understand. What we can realize is that, whether someone is an authority or not, whether someone is knowledgeable or not, is not based on vox populi. Prabhupada used the term vox populi, means by the majority vote. If you see this Ambedkar, he was liked by even many people in India now. They celebrated his birthday or whatever, right? Recently. So, but you see, he's actually not even a proper, he's not even an authority, right, on Shastra, on, to speak about Shastra. We can see in his life, no wonder he took up Buddhism, right? I think, right, Prabhu? He took up Buddhism, if not mistaken.
Yeah.
What is Buddhism? Buddhism is atheistic philosophy. So we can understand his mentality is actually an atheistic mentality. So, yeah. So the point, we have to listen from the bona fide acharyas, right? We cannot simply think that, just because so many people are liking this particular person, so therefore this person is an authority, therefore I shall follow him, I shall share about him, So this can apply in our daily life. We can see like many personalities are there. Example, many people like to quote Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, they are even Jakki Vasudev, Sadguru. So these personalities are there, but my question is how to identify whether they are bona fide or not. Prabhu have given the method. So first of all, we have to check according to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. If they are not aligned with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, therefore they are called actually Māyayāpahṛta-jñānā. So I think that is an important point, Prabhu, isn't it? So not only Ambedkar, actually, if you're going to speak and expose, you're going to expose, there are a lot of lists are there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the point. And
it's
yeah,
okay.
I mean,
It's okay.
Sorry,
Coming soon, I'll be making a playlist for this because this is the second video.
right.
So there'll be a separate playlist for this. So we can continue to look at other great personalities.
Right. So this is the thing. Our current problem is that we are listening from the unauthorized source. Therefore, the blind following the blind. Therefore, we are in darkness. So therefore, yeah, this is the point. And yeah, I saw some of the points. He said that he quoted from the chapter 10, right, Prabhu? I saw. Even Krishna says, I am Skanda, I am Murugan. So that doesn't mean Krishna is Murugan, isn't it? Because he said Rudra is Shiva. So even Krishna says, I am Himalaya, I am Meru. So that is why you have to understand the Gita, from the bona fide source. So, and another point also, he's trying to say about violence, right? Gita is teaching about violence, isn't it? So, yeah, we must understand. Yes, Krishna, he is in the battlefield. Krishna is Kshatriya, right? So, he is asking Arjuna to fight. But that is not violence. When you are fighting for dharma, that is not violence. Just like the example we can see is just like a policeman. Prabhu have given the example. Like a policeman, when he killed the thief, is it called violence or it is called it's a duty, isn't it? You get a award, you get a medal. So we have to understand in that way. So when Arjuna, he is a Kshatriya, so his duty is to fight. So when he killed the opposition party, which they are themselves are, they are, Prabhupada called them, the invaders, the 6 types of people, in chapter 1.
Aggressors.
Yes, aggressors, exactly. So when you are facing with such aggressors, wouldn't you kill them? Right? If someone come and rompa you, what you will do? You will practice non-violence and say, no, I don't want to do anything, or you're going to fight with him, or report to the police and ask him to catch. So this is the understanding. So we must understand violence as per Shastra. That is the point. So Shastra, they are everything is possible in Shastra. Even you can show your anger in Krishna consciousness. So it is not that a Krishna conscious person means we must not be angry. Why Prabhu you are getting angry? Why Prabhu you are criticizing Ambedkar? No. We can use anger according to Shastra. It says when someone is criticizing Krishna, Shastra or Sadhu, you should be angry. So yeah, even anger can be used in Krishna consciousness. Even war can be used in Krishna consciousness. The point is, you must follow Shastra. So I think that is what I understand, Prabhu, from the whole thing, right? So thank you very much. I hope we have more discussion like this.
Prabhu, I just want to add a few things.
Yes, hello, Prabhu.
Actually, it's not my intention to insult Ambedkar because there's no need for me to insult him.
Yes.
He has done all the hard work. We just have to show what he has written. I just reproduce what he has written, and we can clearly see all his contradictions. So there's no need for me to insult him.
Yeah, exactly. We are just revealing the fact. It's not insulting. So now the audience, they can judge. So Ambedkar, the problem with us is we simply blindly trust everyone. Ambedkar, this person. So now you have to check. What is the checkpoint? Shastra, Bhagavad Gita. So that is the point. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll meet again next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.